Hey, this is Rick with Social Good Software. In this short demo, I'm going to be sharing with you how to create a reserved events query. These event queries are super helpful for the calendar to be able to show availability. So what I want to do here is I just want to take a few seconds to show you how these calendars are updated with availability and show you how we use capacity. So what I want to do here is I just want to go ahead and draw it out for you, and then we'll go and actually create the queries. So let me go ahead and kind of explain to you how this is put together. So the way it works is we have two queries for our calendar. Query number one will give us the capacity. So this is the query that you hopefully have set up by this point already. This just simply shows you what's currently available inside of Altru. This goes ahead and gives you a capacity. Let's say for the sake of simplicity, our capacity is 100. It will go ahead and give you the capacity for each time slot and hour. And then what we need to do is we need to create a second query that gives us what we have sold. So this is going to be our sold query. And what we're essentially going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a sum of all of the items sold. So let's say, for example, there was a transaction here with 3. There was another one with 4 tickets, another one for 5, another one for 7. So what happens now is we go ahead and take a sum of all these. So 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 5, that goes ahead and gives us 15, plus 4, this is 19. And then we over here, we have 100. So all we do is we go 100 minus 19 will give us 81. And then this is how we're able to actually check availability. So we essentially just repeat this process for every single date, and that's how we calculate the availability. Now you must be asking, Rick, why in the world will you just not query availability and show the, subtract availability from capacity? Why are you doing all this math to be able to figure this out? Well, Altru doesn't give you the ability to query for availability. So this is kind of a workaround that we found for us to be able to go ahead and still be able to show availability in the calendar while working around Altru's limitations. So it's not a perfect solution and it's not 100% accurate all the time, but it does get us pretty close to an actual availability number. So let's go ahead and jump into the query, and I'll just show you how this is put together now that you understand how it works. So we're going to go ahead and quit out of here, and we're going to go ahead and add an ad hoc query. Now the query that we're going to be creating is going to be a sales order query. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be doing a sum of all the sales orders. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into that one there. And we want to go ahead and get rid of the lookup IDs. That's not something we're going to need for this query. So we just want to have a blank slate like the one we're looking at here. So we're going to go down to sales order item ticket, program events. Then inside the program events, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need the actual program. This is the name of it. We're also going to go ahead and need the start date. And then we're going to need the start time. And then the end time. And then we're also going to go ahead and need the quantity for all the order items that were purchased. So if we go to quantity, here's our quantity here. And then we're also going to need the sales order record ID. This is how we're able to do a sum of multiple items being purchased. So it's very important that you do this sales order record ID because we're going to need this here shortly in a second. Now that we have our output fields to be able to do that sum that I explained to you earlier, the next action item here is to restrict this query. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make it a rolling query. So we're not looking at stuff in the past. So we just want to say the event start date is on or after. So we're going to go to on or after a specific date, which is today. So again, this is just going to be making your calendar a rolling calendar. So we're not looking at stuff in the past. And then we're also going to need the name. So we're going to go ahead and bring the name here. And we're going to say equals to museum admission. Now this might be different for your organization. So whatever you named your program, that's the name you want to use here. In my case, this is what it's called. In your example, it might be a little bit different for your organization, so make sure that you get the program name in order for you to be able to display those transactions. And then we're also going to go ahead and grab a couple things here. We're going to need to make sure that this has not been refunded. So we're going to go here to sales orders, and then we're going to say refund status is equal to 0. So this just means that hasn't been refunded. And all this is saying is that the refund status is equal to 0, which means we have not refunded them. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and look at the status of the actual transaction. So we're going to go to sales order here. And the thing we're looking for here is the sales order status. And in our case, we want to say one of, and we want to say confirmed, completed here, and confirmed. Now, depending on your organization, you might also need reserved. The difference between completed and reserved is when somebody reserves something, that means that payment wasn't typically collected. So if somebody calls in over the phone, reserves a date and time, but no payment is collected until they visit in person, then this is what the reserved event option means. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it will apply for your specific calendar, but if you're doing reservations over the phone and not collecting payment, then you have to make sure to include this reserved one. Otherwise, they will not be included. Okay, so now that we went ahead and checked that off, at this point, we're ready to go ahead and save our query. All right, now that we have given it a name, we're going to go ahead and click Save and Close. And we're going to go ahead and get our OData link to be able to add this into our calendar. And we're going to jump over to our calendar here. Now, this is a calendar that we've been working on with the reserved events. And what we want to do here is we want to click on Add an OData link. We're going to go ahead and paste in our link here. We're going to click on Next. And this will take a couple seconds for it to go and validate that link. Once it's validated, we'll be able to go ahead and set up the rest of the configuration for the calendar itself. So we'll give this a few seconds for it to complete. We're going to go ahead and click Add a Link, and that goes ahead and adds the link. Now that the link has been added, we need to make sure that we configure this correctly. So we want to go ahead and click on this little gear. And this will give us the option to go ahead and make sure that this gets configured correctly. So we have the option to hide events once the capacity is reached. So, all the events are sold out for that time. We can hide the events like this, so they're no longer shown on the calendar. Or we can show the events, and then we can customize what the events actually look like. So if you don't want it to say the title, you can just say sold out. And that will go ahead and mark it as sold out with the checkbox of sold out and the event color of this specific color that we have entered in as a hex format. Now, if you want to name these differently, you can. I'm just going to leave them like this. But if you want to go ahead and rename the checkbox to something else, you definitely have that option. If you want to rename the event label, you can also set that as well. Again, that's the first option here. So if you want to change that, you can. But the important part that we care about here is this section down here for the mapping. So the first thing we want to map is the title. So for us, this is going to be the name. And then the start date is going to be the start date here. And then the start time is going to be the start time here. The quantity is going to be the quantity here. And the system record ID is going to be the system record ID here. These values need to match up exactly from the ones that you selected for just the standard program query. So in that query, you went ahead and outputted these fields. So those fields should be matching exactly to these fields here. Because again, we're going to do that sum, and the way we calculate the sum is based on the sales order that was processed and the items actually processed within the sales order. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and click on save here. And then at this point, we have successfully completed the reserved events query, which allows us to be able to see capacity and quantity on the calendar. So if we go here into the event name, now you have the option to put in this variable here called availability, like so. And then now your calendar will show the availability for that given event date and time based on the calculation we're doing with the reserved events query. So hopefully that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward once you kind of wrap your mind around how we're doing this. And feel free to adjust the query. Feel free to make any revisions for your organization. This is just an example, but if you run into any problems, please reach out to support. We're always happy to help. And that's going to go ahead and do it here for me. Once again, this is Rick from Social Good Software. Hopefully you found this video helpful. We're always looking to improve and make things better. If something was not clearly explained in this video, or maybe you just are still a little bit confused and have some additional questions that we didn't talk about in the video, don't worry, we're here to help. Please go over to socialgoodsoftware.com/feedback. You're able to provide us feedback on this training. You're able to provide us feedback on the software. We're always looking to improve. So if you have any suggestions, please reach out to us. Again, socialgoodsoftware.com/feedback. You'll be able to go ahead and share your thoughts with us, and we're always happy to help.